Joining me today is Tom Marsh, who's the town manager of Windsor, Vermont. So Tom, I wanted to keep talking about the solar array. It's one of the biggest in the state's history if it's completed as originally designed. But maybe let's step back a second and sort of talk me through how we got to where we are today.
Okay, I think the starting point was the legislative mandate that was passed a few years ago to reach certain renewable energy goals. The one that's coming up
for the entire state of Vermont.
For the entire state of Vermont, where the entire state has an objective of meeting 50% renewable energies by 2017.
And how did they define renewable? Is it wind, solar, dams, or
hydro? Yeah.
And so those three are the three elements that Vermont really has to.
Yeah, there may be others, but certainly the solar arrays, the wind turbines, and hydropower are the three that, and particularly hydropower, I believe, is the biggest in that mix.
So the state said this is where we need to head to get to get off fossil fuels.
Correct.
And the state was it 248 that pushed this, or was that previous to
well,
that?
it wouldn't say push it, but what 248 does is the legislation that guides how the Public Service Commission will review projects of this magnitude. And just to be clear, if you're like at 150,000 kilowatts, and I'm getting a bit out of my depth, like I'm certainly not.
And I'm not going to be somebody who can say, oh wait, I thought that was 160 kilowatts.
Yeah.
So.
But small, like whether it's on your home or like a 2, 3, 4 acres, things like that, that doesn't fall under this process. But this is 19,000 solar panels with a footprint of about 35 acres. When you get up to that magnitude, this 248 process follows that, and then actually if you get and this is like 4.25 megawatts, if you get above 5 megawatts, there's another process for even bigger arrays, but I don't believe any of those are currently on the radar.
But those processes take the towns out of the normal procedure, the town zoning and planning, and is that shifted to Montpelier, or is that do the towns across the state of Vermont really have a stake at the table for these medium to large facilities?
Well, interestingly, up until very recently, if one of these projects was being proposed for a municipality, they would have to apply for standing in the process. They have to demonstrate they have a vested interest in the outcome of it. Recent changes to the program have made as a standard that municipalities have standing in the process, so you have the opportunity to participate in the overall public process. It's complicated. It's not where the town writes a letter saying we support or don't, or we have conditions. It usually takes an attorney, well, it definitely takes an attorney. It can be quite complicated. In the area, the most recent similar type process was with the energy plant that was being proposed down in Springfield using Biomass, right. So similar thing, similar scale, the Act 248 process, and in the end, things like traffic, from what I understand, how are the trucks going to get in and out with all the biomass material, were the things that really derailed that project. But this is the same project, same process as that.
So the main thing is the towns really do have a stake and do have the ability to influence the decision making.
They do.
And so people in southern Vermont and Windsor, they know that you and they will be able to affect this.
They will, and I think it's an important distinction to understand the difference between not listening and not agreeing. Just because your particular position isn't agreed to doesn't mean that it wasn't listened to. It just means it wasn't agreed. Right.
There are multiple stakeholders here.
Correct.
And so the government, has a position that you get 50% goal. That's not nothing. That's a pretty. I mean, that probably would lead the nation if it doesn't lead the nation.
Correct.
So that's a major goal for the state of Vermont. So there's a lot of different stakeholders.
There are, and even to be clear, in our particular situation here in Windsor, the Act 248 process hadn't even started yet. Green Mountain Power and the state came to the town before they even filed the application. There are some that say that they should have come to the town back in February when they started thinking about putting an array there, but they didn't come to us until they had determined what the best site was and things like that. So they had to have some details, and I would agree that you have to have something to talk about before you begin the conversation.
Well, hey, we're about out of time in this segment, so...